Hello, we're going to do a preservative talk radio, but I got a special story today. This is the anecdote amazing, all right? So we're going to tell you a story about an adventure where I was starving for money, where I desperately needed tens or lots of thousands of dollars, and I was all stressed out, and so I'm going to tell you a story right now, but I got to push my recording button and start recording. And here we go. We're going to do a preservative talk radio. We're actually going to record a radio show right now. And it's going to be a special event where I tell you a story of divine intervention. So either this divine intervention stuff is real or it's not. So let's go ahead and let's start recording. Fellow Freedom fans, David Alan Carmichael, Preservative Talk Radio, for the Nooga radio listening audience, the Nooga Radio Network, 96.9 FM, Chattanooga, 99.7 Ootelwah, and 107.5 Northwest Georgia. It's David Alan Carmichael, Preservative Talk Radio. And again, today, normally I engage the issues of the day on a constitutional basis, biblical basis, and the basis of right versus wrong. However, I'm going to tell you a scary story. This really happened. And I'm going to give you, just imagine what would happen if you obeyed God and all it got you was unemployment. Some of you have read Faith, the Final Frontier. Some of you have done that. And there's an episode here that says, so I obeyed God, and what did it get me? Unemployment. So are you willing to do what you understand is the right thing to do, even if you get fired? So again, for those of you who know, I was a chief petty officer in the Navy, and I came to the conclusion that I had to make a religious accommodation request, and they didn't take it well. Okay, the Navy couldn't take a joke. I don't know how come military people who have bombs and things don't have a sense of humor? I don't know. But either way, I had to make this religious accommodation request, and they fired me. Now, it turns out, if you'll notice the law books behind me, for those of you who are watching on the live stream, that there is a law library behind my head, and so you're just going to have to imagine it on the radio. I, by divine intervention, got a law library. So I'm evicted from the Navy, but actually just before I got evicted from the Navy, I was at an auction, a Defense Reutilization and Marketing Office auction, as a hobby. And I would go there and I would look over the stuff and I would buy it and I'd sell it at yard sales. Sometimes I'd buy cars and sell them. And it was kind of a sideline profit-making thing. It was a lot of fun. It was a hobby and I enjoyed it. And one day I looked in this great big box and I saw these law books. And at the time I was trying to figure out, how do I obey God and man at the same time? If God puts something on me and it appears that man's rules disagree with God's rules, what do I do? So I had that question. And what did I see in this big, huge box? It was like 4 by 4. It was the size of a pallet in width and depth and length, but height, it was about the same height. And it was filled up about halfway with all of these law books, thousands of dollars of law books. Title 26, which is the U.S. Tax Code. Title 28, which is judicial proceeding. American jurisprudence. I'm trying to think what else. It had some other things in there. And every time I picked up a law book, I realized, I need this. I need to find out. This is the law regarding this issue that appears to be a conflict between my convictions and the rules of men. And of course, I read them, and I discovered that the rules of men actually fulfilled the laws of God, and you just have to, let's say, operate in a certain way that upholds both God's laws and man's laws. So I ended up asking for religious accommodation. They didn't take it well, and they kicked me out of the Navy. And then what happened is I filed suit against the United States without a lawyer because I couldn't find any lawyers. And so I filed suit against the United States And eventually a lawyer came to help me. It was Herb Titus. And he rewrote the case. He rewrote the complaint. It had the same issues of law, but many less words. And eventually we won the case. And we won the case so well that I had a 6-figure check with my name on it. And that was really exciting. But that check came in 2006. I had to pay off a whole lot of debts that I incurred, in fact, including lawyer's fees. But so at the end of that, for 5 years while we're suing the United States, I had this strange urge to get a motorhome and drive my family across the country. It was just, I couldn't help it. And my wife would say, David, why are you torturing us? We'll never be able to afford a motorhome. You know, what are you thinking? We're dirt poor. We're barely getting by every day. We're surviving off of manna. And you're shopping for brand new motorhomes? What are you thinking? So and so I told her, I said, no, Leslie, we're going to do this. We're going to have an opportunity to buy a motorhome, and we're going to cruise across the country because you guys have been suffering for the last 10 years or whatever it was. And I figure it's time for y'all to not have to suffer so much. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to win this case. And when we win this case, I'm going to buy a motorhome brand new. And then we're going to drive across the country. We're going to go all the way across the country with our little family on a brand new motorhome. So that's what I plan on doing. Now, when we finally won the case and I got a big check, and so I paid off some debts and stuff like that, and I figured out how much money we would have. I knew how much I would have to buy a motorhome for. I could afford a $57,000 motorhome, and plus tax and plus gas to get across the country and back. So I did all the math of how we could live in a motorhome for 2 months and all the mileage to go coast to coast. And I did the math and I came out, I figured I had so much left. And then what we were going to do is sell the motorhome and use it to pay my kids' college tuition. So here I am after all these years of living on the edge, being completely poor, and we started a Christian ministry with no support, and then all of a sudden support started coming in. And so we were living this lifestyle of just really like gypsies. Of course, we were in a house, but it was one of these things where we were just absolutely every day having to seek God to find out what we were going to do that day and how we were going to eat. And that went from 1997 all the way to 2006. So for 9 years, we were on the edge. We were in poverty the whole time. And of course, we had miracles that happened during that time, because you can't live in a situation where you're unhireable and get through life without miracles. And hence, in 2004, I published the book Faith, the Final Frontier, which was it was an autobiography of all these divine interventions. So continuing on with this story. So I had to do all that building up to this point where we won the case, and now I'm going to go on a trip. And here's the other thing. I'd done the math on motorhomes and figure out exactly which kind we wanted, which we needed for our family. Leslie's mother was going to travel with us for a certain amount of time. My mother was going to travel with us for a certain amount of time. And so we needed to be able to house the 6 of us and an extra person and travel across the country and fulfill everything. So we came up with a Coachman Murata with a slide out with 34 MBS or MDS or whatever it was. And I figured out how much I could spend on it. So the problem was these motorhomes were going for about $64,000. And I only had my budget allowed for $57,000. So one day I got on eBay, and here was the perfect brand new Coachman Murata, and it was for sale. And what I did, I had to go to a youth event with the taking my kids to an Awana competition, Bible quiz or something like that. And so I was on eBay, and here comes this thing. What I did, an auto bid. So I put in the auto bid $57,001. So you know that I'll just get to the spoiler alert. for those of you who have done an eBay auction and understand auto bid, you're going to really appreciate this and get a sense that we can't say for sure this is divine intervention, but we certainly can't exclude it. Because guess what? I won the motorhome. For how much? Not for $56,400 or $56,500 or whatever it was where it kicks up to the next level if you have an auto bid. I got it for $57,001. So I don't know I can't remember what the previous bid was, but it pushed my auto bid all the way up and I got it for $57,001. Now here's the thing. Am I being like, I've lived my whole last 9 years on complete dependence on the living God for everything. Now, so if you watch the video stream, you see shelves that have law books on them. Well, back in the day, next to my office, there was, I had an inbox. And so in the inbox was our income. So if it was in the inbox, it was income. And my wife came up to me one day and said, honey, do we have money for? And she said, whatever. Now, a year prior to this, we had a box of cash with all different envelopes that said the power bill, the water bill, entertainment, Christmas, birthdays, vacation. We had all these envelopes that would collect cash. And so over time, if we wanted to have extra money for something, we would cut back on some other thing. But the question was always, do we have money for? And I would look in the envelope to see if there was money for that thing. And if we had the money, it was good. So it was a really good, I think, a responsible way to budget. For me, it was better doing it than doing it on paper. Some people can do their budget on paper. I needed tangible in envelope. So in this time, when we're desperately poor, we didn't have money. We always didn't have money for whatever. There was no envelopes. We would have money come in and we'd say, do we have a need for groceries? Let's go get it. Do we have a need for the phone bill? Let's pay it. Do we have a need for to fix the car? Let's do it. And we would only do it based on an amount of money that came in that day. And then so when something came in, we'd look on the horizon and we'd say, what is the most pressing need right now that we can apply this money to? That's how we did things from that point on. So she came to me and she'd say, do we have money for? And I'd say, is it a need? And she, well, do we have the money? I said, is it a need? Do we have the money? Is it a need? You don't understand. If it's a need, I will look in the box and see what we have. If it's not a need, no, we don't have money for it. So she'd say, yeah, it's a need. And I'd turn to the box and see if there's something in the inbox, in the income box. And if there was something there, we'd just apply it to the need. The phone bill would have to wait. And of course, a few days later, we'd have the need met. Now, I operated like this for 9 years, destitute. Compared to most people, we really didn't have things. But again, we had miracles would come. Like we needed a refrigerator and I had $200 and somebody wants to sell me a refrigerator for $200. And it was just a new refrigerator for $200. So, it was just this kind of thing that was going on. It was just one thing after another. We'd have manna from heaven for 9 years. And now I'm looking at this thing going, how crazy is this that I'm being bold enough to go pay $57,000 for a motorhome and to drive across the country? Is that sinful? Are we allowed to actually do what other people do if they've got the chance to do it? And I was second guessing the whole time. So here we are. Now, the point of the story is, I'm telling you this because there's this stress, this tension that happened. Because it turned out because of situation changes, when we left Virginia to go to California and back, we didn't have enough money to make the trip. I knew the day we left, because of situation changes on our schedule, that we would not have enough money to return. I did the math and figured out we'd be in California when I ran out of money. And I'll tell you how that came about. And then I got to tell you what happened. There was a divine intervention. And so you're going to have to hear the rest of the story that I'm setting up right now. And we're going to come back. I'm David Alan Carmichael. This is Preservative Talk Radio. We're going to get off the constitutional basis, biblical basis, the basis of right versus wrong here. We're going to be sticking to right versus wrong, but we're also going to be telling you a story, an anecdote of you tell me, was this divine intervention or was it not? Am I just being absolutely silly? And this is just irresponsible? What is going on here? I want you to tell me. And also what I'm going to tell you is at the very end, there's a cliffhanger involved. Because at the end of this trip, I owe the college $9,000 so my daughter can enter the college. So not only have I, so it's a long story. We're going to come back. Preservative Talk Radio. You stay tuned, you Nooga listening audience. You're going to get excited. So now, video people, I'm going to keep the streaming going. And the last time I made an adjustment to my recording is that the audio messed up. So I'm not going to skip ahead on our little bumper music. I'm going to let it play out the whole way. So I want you to, if you can, like and subscribe. Tell your friends, like and subscribe. This is sort of a weird event. You know, not always do I tell you a faith story in the middle of my issues of the day discussion, but I think it's important. And I woke up this morning in bed, and I'm hoping it was when you're sleeping in a position you're not used to, you wake up and you got all these strange pains and everything like that. But I woke up and I had pain. Now, if you've ever had a 5-way bypass and you have any kind of pains in your chest, you get paranoia. And so I woke up and I've got this strange pain. And then I realized it might be just because I was sleeping in a strange position. But I also thought about the story and I thought, you know what? I need to tell some of my stories while I'm still here. Because they're interesting, they really happened, and I haven't written a sequel to the book yet. So this was after Faith, the Final Frontier. You can find it on Amazon, I think, for I don't know what. I give them away for free, but there's ways to get it other ways. But Kindle also, you can get it. I think you pay 70 cents or something like that. It's 99 cents, and you can read Faith, the Final Frontier. But I got to get these stories out and record them somewhere while I'm still here. So we're going to take a few seconds out right now because we're going to get back into the radio show. Fellow Freedom fans, David Alan Carmichael back with Preservative Talk Radio, engaging the issues normally on a constitutional basis, biblical basis, the basis of right versus wrong. But today I'm unloading a story. And why am I telling this story? And I just told somebody else that I woke up this morning with this story on my brain. And I had, just to let you know, it wasn't long ago, I had a 5-way bypass. And so I'm very conscious of my mortality. So it seems kind of strange, but I realize I've got these real things that happen in my life, and I have not I have not written a sequel to the book, Faith, the Final Frontier. But this happened after Faith, the Final Frontier was published. And so I have these real events that happen that would be a sequel to my first book, new episodes. So I was thinking about it this morning and I realized I need to go ahead and tell this story on the radio. It'll be preserved. Some other people can listen to it and they can appreciate what happened. But it was real life, again, manna from heaven. Divine intervention, not just mere circumstance, not just mere happenstance. Some people say, I use the word coincidentally, kind of flippantly, and somebody responded to me saying, maybe you should have said providentially. So the providence of God, is it just merely already fixed, or is there cause and effect? Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Is there cause and effect? Are the eyes of the Lord searching to and fro throughout the earth, looking to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are loyal to him. Here's the question. Interesting thing. Let's go anecdotal. So here I am, got this big money judgment, bought a motorhome cash, and so I bought a motorhome cash, and I'm driving my family across the country. And this is what happened. I'd done the math to figure out how we can go across the country to California and then come back through the South. So I'm going to visit my family and visit Leslie's family. We're going to go coast to coast, and we're going to do some things on the way. And I did the math, and I figured out how much cash I needed, and I had that cash. However, we had a problem. My wife said, I want to go to the Florida Keys. What? That's not on the list. Florida Keys, that's a huge extra amount. That's a lot more. And I thought, whoa. Well, she asked for it. I told her we're giving this trip. And if we don't have enough money to do everything else, we're just going to have to, maybe we'll turn around before California or something. But we'll go to the Florida Keys. So we went all the way to Key West, and we had a good time in the Florida Keys. And then we came back, and it turns out, our kids aren't going to miss summer camp. They're not going to miss their last their last semester of their high school camp. They have church camp, and it was going to be in Montreat, North Carolina, at the college there, Montreat College. So that was where the camp was going to be. So we were going to come up from the Florida Keys, go up to North Carolina, go to camp, and we were going to sit there for a week with the youth minister's daughter was going to stay with us at a campground in Swannanoa. And we were going to be there a week waiting for my oldest two to finish their last high school camp. So we were doing that. So that's all time. So a trip to Florida and a trip to camp, we're adding like 2.5 weeks of stall on what would have been a cross-country trip. So already we've cut hugely into our budget. So I understood that when we left Virginia, we were not going to have enough money to make the whole trip. So here I am, I'm questioning whether all of a sudden I'm being extravagant, that I'm doing something that's very fleshly. I've been living for 9 years on divine intervention every day, very spiritually. And all of a sudden I'm going all flesh, and I'm feeling guilty about it. Or I'm thinking I ought to feel guilty. And so the day we left Virginia, I knew. And you know who didn't know? My wife didn't know. My sons and my youngest daughter did not know. My mother-in-law, who was traveling with us on the first leg of the trip, they did not know that I did not have enough money to get back from, if eventually the math worked out that I'd run out of money in California. But my daughter Bethany knew it, and she was kind of like my faith partner in this, and my lawyer knew it. So how could I have the audacity to leave town without enough money to get back? And the reason why, a check was in the mail. We had won a Equal Access to Justice Act motion where they paid my lawyer's fees. So not only did I sue them and I get all my back pay, retirement, and future retirement coming, I also get lawyer's fees. So I had a check in the mail. I had a check coming for like $26,000. And so it wasn't all my lawyer fees, but it got a significant part back. So the government owes me $26,000, and there's a check in the mail. So I'm leaving Virginia with a $26,000 check in the mail. And for the first time in 9 years, I'm relying on a check in the mail. Now I'm feeling guilty about that. I've been operating on manna for 9 years, and now there's a check in the mail, and I'm trusting, and it was already late. So of course, somewhere in this, what's going to end up being a 60-day trip, somewhere in that time, this $26,000 has got to show up. It's going to show up. So again, I'm second guessing this the whole time. Now, as I'm driving, how many of you, raise your hands, have seen the movie RV? And there's kind of profane things in it, like they make profane comments and allusions and stuff. So I don't recommend the movie to anybody. But if you've seen the movie, you remember, spoiler for you, that Robin Williams takes his family on this vacation, and he knows that there's a secret involved. They believe that he's off having a vacation, but there's a secret going on that his family doesn't know about. So here I go, basically a parallel to the movie RV in so many ways. A little, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking about the family type, it almost the family. There was a homeschool family they picked up along the way, is like reminded us of us. Okay. So, but he leaves town with a secret happening. So I'm leaving town with a secret happening. And on the trip, by the way, we saw the movie RV. I actually cried. I cried. I don't mean laughing cried. I wept in the middle of the movie RV at the very end. Just because there were so many things that happened in that movie that happened to us on the trip. One of them being this secret that I had, that we didn't have enough money to get home. I saw it in California because, let me tell you, I forecast that we'd run out of money in California. Guess what we did? We were out of money in California. So we actually crossed the border, and I had 150, I think I had $200 left in my pocket. We pulled up to a gas station, and I needed $150 in gas at the Northern California. We're on our way to Southern California. So all of these things that happened in the RV movie were happening to me. And eventually, as soon as we saw the RV movie, my wife didn't notice it, but I was actually crying at the end of the movie because I was in stress. I was like, oh my gosh, this is painful. I actually, an hour later, pulled my wife aside and explained to her, honey, I've had a secret I've kept from you. We don't have enough money to get home. All right. So that's what happened, is we did this whole trip. We got out to California, and then right in Northern California, right when I'm about to spend nearly my last $200 on gas, my mother, who was riding with us at the second half of that trip, came up to me all like angry, like gonna pick a fight. And she said, David, we're in California. I've been waiting for you guys to finally get out here to come visit me. And while we're in California, I'm paying for everything. Do you understand that? Do you understand me? This is from now on in California, I'm paying for everything. I said, okay, Mom, thank you. God bless you. So she bought the gas, and I ended up maintaining $200 in my pocket so we could actually go. She might have even paid for the RV movie, but there was a bunch of things, we might have done in California if I had more money. We went to Santa Cruz. Saw some friends on the beach in California. In the backdrop, it looks like that carnival place in Santa Cruz. We didn't go to the carnival. I wasn't going to make my mom pay for our carnival. We went to Santa Cruz Beach and just got to hear the roller coaster going on in the background. But so here, divine intervention. We get to California, I'm out of money. And on the way, I'm calling my lawyer, and he's saying, David, it's not here. The Navy's not fulfilling their obligation. I don't know. So here I'm relying on this check, and it's not showing up. So then we ended up in California. Now it turns out when I called my lawyer I'm looking for ways to sell the motorhome. We're in a motorhome with my family, and I'm trying to sell it behind my family's back. And what I was going to do is just sell the motorhome in California and then buy a car and drive home in shame. Right. So, last thing I talked to my lawyer, it turns out he had a certain amount of money on retainer, and it turned out he had already committed to never charging me again. He committed for me being his pro bono guy forever, for me and my family. He had committed to God that from that point on, at whatever it was, we got all the lawyer's fees. I had already paid him the lawyer's fees. So all this money was coming back to me. So he had already committed he would not ever charge me anything from that point on. So I didn't know about that. So he said, David, you've got money right here. And I said, no, that's your money. He said, no, it's your money. I said, well, it's our money. It's retainer. He said, no, David, I will never charge you again. This is your money. Please send the money. So we had money to get back. But on the way home, I'm panicking because now 3 days after we get home, I have $9,000 that I owe the college. I'm supposed to, on Wednesday, we get back on Saturday, I'm supposed to on Wednesday send my daughter to college with a $9,000 check for tuition. That's an obligation. So here's the other thing what you don't understand. In the middle of suing the United States, I've got a church where there's this defamation, river of defamation happening. How could David put his family in jeopardy and getting kicked out of the Navy for some cockamamie religious conviction? So this is my church family making those comments. My pastor had my back because he knew what was going on here, and he was my biggest fan. But the church itself, it was like defamation nation. So I've got the whole church body talking bad about me. Now they're talking bad about me about being so extravagant of driving my family across the country in a motorhome. So I realize when I go home and I'm going to be in the situation where I can't even send my daughter to college because I've got this extravagant motorhome I'm sitting on. You know, all my money is in the motorhome that we were going to sell. I was stressing out. So I'm thinking, well, my wife has some rich family. I don't know. Well, let's see one of those well-paid businessmen, real estate guys or whoever. You know, they got some, compared to us, maybe one of them can lend me $9,000. And so I'm thinking about that. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to go borrow money from my wife's family. Okay. And I thought about my family and I thought about, no. Okay. And so I'm panicking. I'm driving home from California, visiting family along the way. And I finally got to Mississippi and I'm visiting family in Mississippi. And we're going to be, and I think this is Wednesday before we got home on Saturday. And I hear the sermon. I was stressing out. I was in a panic attack perpetually thinking about what am I going to do? Maybe I'll go to church and on Sunday morning, I will go and say, hey guys, can somebody lend me $9,000? Right? And now talk about defamation nation. Talk about humiliation. But in the sermon on Wednesday night in Pascagoula, Church on the Rock, the sermon said, the point of Jesus calming the storm was not about his power to shut down the weather. The message was about what they should be doing, and this is what I want you to hear. The disciples should be sleeping in the boat like Jesus. So the point of the story, we're going to come back. You're going to hear the end of the cliffhanger in the divine intervention. I'll just spoiler there. But it's about sleeping in the boat, about trusting our Heavenly Father when we ask for His help, that He's there to help us. We should be sleeping in the boat. So here we are. We're going to go, we've got another segment, another 15-minute segment, and now you're going to hear the rest of it is we're going to tell you the rest of the story. It's kind of a long story. I didn't realize it was going to take me 45 minutes to tell, but here we are. So I want you to, whether you like it or not, like it and subscribe. I guess there's algorithms I'm supposed to be meeting so that we can eventually get people tuning into our video. I don't know if you've heard any of my shows, but I want to tell you that the shows are very substantive because I get to the principles of law. I don't just do Republican versus Democrat factionalism. I give substance. And then every now and then, normally it's only one segment, that I'll do an anecdote about real divine intervention. So, how many people have sued the United States over a religious liberties thing and won? Of course, it didn't make the national news. And I got to trim my mustache so I don't keep doing that nose thing. But so I've got about 30 seconds here. If you want to get Faith, the Final Frontier, again, you can get it on Kindle and you can... there's some out there on Amazon. I've seen them. Somebody was selling one for $25. So I give them away for free. So mine are not for sale. And I give them out in a certain situation if I believe it'll do a ministry for somebody. I give them that book. So I bought 1,000 of them, sold 350 so I could give away the rest. So we're about ready to go back to our radio broadcast. fellow Freedom fans. David Alan Carmichael back again. Nougat Radio. You know it, 96.9 FM, Chattanooga, 99.7 Ootelwah, and 107.5 Northwest Georgia. So we're back with a strange story, a real story. Cliffhanger. I need $9,000, and I'm sitting on a motorhome that I'm going to sell for. It sold for $50,000, and it's nearly new. It's got an extra 12,000 miles on it that didn't have when I bought it. But we finished this trip, and I'm on my way home, and I need $9,000, and I'm panicking because I realize if I try to borrow $9,000 because there's a Navy check in the mail for $26,000 the Navy owes me. It's in the mail. It should have been here 2 months ago. So I know the money's coming. I know that I'm going to sell this motorhome, but obviously you can't sell it. If I show up back home on Saturday, go to church on Sunday and say, hey, congregation, I have this motorhome, I guess you noticed, out in the parking lot, and I'm going to sell it for about $50,000. And I've got a check in the mail for $26,000. But in the meantime, on Wednesday, I need $9,000, or all this stuff to send my daughter to college is out the window. Help, can somebody borrow money? So Wednesday, just prior to showing up, I get the sermon that says on Jesus calming the storm, rebuking the wind and the waves. And the sermon said that wasn't, his power wasn't the point of the story. Time to cough. The point of the story was about sleeping in the boat, not being stressed, not having anxiety, but trusting your living God to get you through your storm. All right? He might calm the wind and the waves, but nonetheless, you're supposed to be sleeping in the boat like he was. So this is what happened. So I hear the sermon on Wednesday, and all of a sudden I go, oh man, I am a sinful man. I'm a man of unclean lips. You know, Heavenly Father, will you forgive me? I'm going to sleep in the boat. I've been stressing out for 60 days almost over this whole thing about having to check in the mail and stressing out about not having the money to get back from California after this big trip and all this kind of stuff. I have been blowing it for an entire 2 months or more. So I apologized and I said, I'm just going to trust you. How's that, God? I'm just going to trust you. So we're driving to Virginia. It was like midnight, and I crossed the border of Virginia from North Carolina, and I laughed at myself. I thought about how stupid I was. Man, you were going to go and beg the congregation for $9,000. Somebody to loan you money, right? You stupid. You're just, you're just ridiculous. So I was laughing about that. So the next morning, we go to church. We hadn't seen everybody for 2 months. It was great. They were saying, how was your trip? You know, we're just reuniting with everybody. It's really a good time. And we're like we've got a code to set the alarms and everything. So we're taking our time talking to everybody, and we're one of the last few people out. And this guy comes up to me, and this is what happened. So, you know, I need $9,000, and all my money is in the motorhome right now, and except a check in the mail. So I'm just standing there, and this guy Brian comes up to me, and he says he's a friend of Chaps Klingenschmidt, of a little trivia there. So you know about that guy, is kind of famous. We're now acquainted because of my friend Brian. But my friend Brian comes up to me and he says, David, and he's shaking his finger in my face. And you know, like when people get angry, like my mother did, David, you have a need. You have a need, and you have to tell me about it because I'm supposed to meet it. And then his wife is standing next to him, and she's like scared. She'd never seen him act like this. She's looking at him like with her eyes, your brow kind of frowning and everything. And then he goes on to continue. So after he tells me he's going to meet it, he goes, and he starts kind of looking confused and dazed. And he points back to in front of the sound booth, and he says, I was standing right there. And he says, and all of a sudden God spoke to me. This has never happened to me in my whole life, but God spoke to me. And he said, you have a need. And he said, it's something about, it's money. It's a financial thing. There's something about some sort of an automobile. I'm not really sure. It was kind of confusing, but you have a need and I'm supposed to meet it. Now tell me about that. Okay, so there's the providence of God, right? But we're seeing the providence of God manifesting in this guy's brain right now. So theologically, we could all argue about whether God speaks to us or not. Let me just tell you, this is what he said. And look at the coincidence, or some would say providence. He gets a picture of my need, and he comes up to me angrily, ordering me to tell him what my need was. So I tell him the whole story. The thing, it might have taken as long as this radio show has to take, maybe a little bit shorter. Okay, at least like 15 minutes. I spend 15 minutes telling him the hard, brutal story, the RV movie, the everything, the sermon about sleeping in the boat. So I tell him everything, but I didn't tell him the bottom line. I said, so I don't have the money to send Bethany to college, even though there's a check in the mail and I'm sitting on a $50,000 motorhome that I intend to sell. So I said, so Brian, I need $9,000. And he says, tell me where to send it. And his wife, she was like really offended. And it turns out he had just gotten a big pot of money and it was sitting there and he was trying to think about what kind of investment to put it in. But he had a pot of over $10,000 sitting in his checking account with an unplanned, no plan for it. And God had spoken to him and told him, gave this sense of what I was dealing with, and told him he was supposed to meet my need. And again, this really happened. And just think how much fervor the guy had when he was kind of yelling at me, telling me I've got to tell him it. So what happens is he goes, done. So I said, Montreat College, I need it written to Montreat College, $9,000, and Bethany will take the check with her. So he does it. Boom, boom, boom. Writes a check. His wife is really just shocked. And then the next day, on Monday, my lawyer calls me just desperately, says, David, I'm so sorry. It's just not there. I called the Navy and they said they can't even find the paperwork that they submitted to process the thing months ago. So David, I have no idea when the check's going to show up. And I said, and I told Herb Titus the story about Brian. And he laughed and he cried. He just, oh my gosh, praise God. He was so excited about that happening. And again, Brian getting a word from God. He said, it never happened to me, but God spoke to me. So he's experienced a Moses moment. How's that? So if my mayhem, my crazy situation inspires Brian to get a Moses moment, it's all worth it. It's all worth the stress. It's all worth the hardening of my arteries for the last 2 months. It's all worth it because God has changed Brian's life over my motorhome situation. So then what was really neat the next day, or actually it was that afternoon, my lawyer calls and he's laughing. He said he went out to his mailbox and there was the check, $26,000. He said, but we couldn't have gotten it to you by Wednesday because they're in the middle of there was a Supreme Court case. They had a brief they were writing for. They didn't have time to do the mess with that kind of stuff. And the other thing is it's a law firm. So the money, it was written to the law firm, not to me. So it had to go into because it was lawyer's fees. So it was written to the law firm and they wouldn't have the ability to cut me a check right away because it's got to go in. It's got to clear. They're a law firm. They don't write checks on things unless it's already cleared. So he said, you couldn't have had it by Wednesday anyway. So we needed all the divine intervention. So that was my story today. This is normally my preservative talk radio on 96.9 FM. As I tell you stories, engaging the issues on a constitutional basis, biblical basis, the basis of right versus wrong. But today, also broadcasting in 99.7 Ootelwah, is I'm telling you a real life adventure in life, weird situation where I obeyed God and what did it give me? Unemployment, right? Faith, the Final Frontier, the book I wrote. And so then I sued the United States. How do you sue the United States? It was crazy. And we had divine intervention in the middle of the lawsuit. And then I get a check in the mail with my name on it. And they put the term not applicable in the TIN block on the paperwork. It's for a different story. So all these weird things happening. And then again, for 5 years, I've had this urge to buy a motorhome and take my family on a trip. I do it. And we do it in a situation where I don't have enough money to complete the trip. So my lifestyle is not going to change. The sign for me was my lifestyle is not going to change. I'm going to have to continue to be dependent on God even when there's a check in the mail for $26,000. I'm going to be having to depend on God, even though from this day forward for the rest of my life, I'm going to have a retirement check that was up until just that time for 9 years. All of my Navy career had been dead to me, that it had all been destroyed. It had been killed, but God resurrected it. And the eyes of the Lord look to and fro throughout the earth, looking to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are loyal to him. How did that thing come about? That was actually in the Bible, 2 Chronicles 16:9, where God was rebuking the king. I believe it was King Asa. He was rebuking him through the prophet because King Asa had departed from trusting in God to solve a minimum problem. He had a local problem that he could have solved himself, actually, King Asa. And he didn't, or he could have called on the living God, but instead of doing that, he used a pragmatic mode to solve his problem. And God came to him and rebuked him. Oh, by the way, things went badly for Asa after that. But the promise that God gave, the rebuke that God gave to Asa was, the eyes of the Lord look to and fro throughout the earth, looking to show himself strong on behalf of those whose hearts are loyal to him. Now, whether or not you're a religious person, whether or not you believe that God doesn't talk to people that way again today, or else we're just going to have all kinds of nonsense going on. Or if you go, this God stuff's silly. Oh, a bunch of you Christians are a bunch of lunatics believing the Bible. Okay, call me a lunatic. But what's happening is empirically, I'm testing this, right? What does it say in the Bible? Test me now in this. See if I will not pour out on you a blessing that you cannot contain. Malachi chapter 3, around verse 10. So I'm actually in a situation where I'm testing God in these things. I'm testing God with regard to the constitutionality of things. I'm testing God with regard to the application of the Bible in the issues of the day and the decisions I have to make with regard to everything I'm doing, everything I'm thinking. What should I think about the Republicans and President Biden and President Trump and foreign affairs and legislation, SB 1, Tennessee's SB 1, law against the maiming of children? What should I think about it? Well, empirically, I've tested things over decades and found that, one, if I take what the Bible says and do it, I see results. I see manifestations of God's plan by just doing it. I'll tell you a story about somebody came to me and quoted Malachi chapter 3 one time, where God said, test me in this for somebody. Somebody who was questioning whether there was a God, I'll tell you it right now. He told me, he says, I opened the Bible and I put my finger there and he read it. And it said, test me now in this. See if I will not pour out on you a blessing that you cannot contain. So this guy points down this, God, prove yourself. It says, test me in this. He obeyed what it said, and immediately a cause and effect happened. He says, so now, Petty Officer Carmichael, I believe in God, and I wanted to tell you about it because I thought you'd want to know. So this stuff, so we're here at Nooga Radio, and I call it Preservative Talk Radio because we're going to preserve ourselves. We got to preserve our minds. We've got to cleanse our minds and change our perspective and do things to a way that's going to preserve us, that's going to conserve us. And the only way we're going to do it is by trusting in the wisdom that comes from eternity. Okay, I got to stop this recording. I have to probably get my wife from Richmond. And I would like you to like and subscribe, even if you don't like it, or just I don't know what I got to do, but I'm going to work. I'm going to work this thing. I'm going to take whatever I know while I know it, while I'm alive, while I'm breathing. And so periodically we're going to be doing the issues of the day, but we're also going to be giving testimony of things that aren't in Faith, the Final Frontier that could go into a sequel. You have a good day. Thank you for watching, and we will be back someday.